Hello guys, what is happening, and good morning to you. So this is a kind of breaking news live stream. As you guys know, I don't usually do live streams in the morning. It's just that this is just so incredibly ridiculous and stupid that it warranted a live stream. Quite frankly, at this time normally I would be trading, but after seeing this, there's no way that I can trade probably for the next couple of days, because this is just the stupidity and the lengths the British government is trying to go to in order to essentially stop asset prices from falling. But essentially by doing so, they're signing their own death warrant, and they are going to bankrupt millions and millions of people in probably the stupidest decision that the UK government has ever made in about 3 decades. So without further ado, let's get right into this. So pound plunges below $1.11, FTSE 100 slides, and UK bonds tumble as mini budget spooks markets. Sterling has tumbled by 2 cents to 37-year low, and UK gilt yields are surging after that, whatever that guy's name is, the Treasury Secretary, announced a huge unfunded tax cut. So first of all, let's actually discuss what is going on here. And that is why I'm coming out here and making this stream, is because a lot of people in the UK are going to be confused. And you know what? This is relevant to Canada as well, because Canada could end up doing the same thing. And this is what they're going to be faced with if they go down this path. And we've actually talked about this in the past. We've actually said before even the first rate hike on this channel that if they decide to go in and try and rescue the housing market, they will be rewarded by collapsing the currency. And that's essentially what is happening in the UK. And that is not something that I want to come out here and even say, because this is my actual home country. The majority of my family lives over there. So obviously I have massive ties to the UK, and it's not something I want them to go through, is a depression, which essentially looks like it's likely at this point. But the main purpose of what they're doing here is they are deficit spending. They are deficit spending in an inflationary environment. And the problem with deficit spending in an inflationary environment is deficit spending by itself creates new currency. It's essentially creating new credit, which increases the money supply, which dilutes the currency. Now, this is coming at the worst time possible, because the Bank of England only yesterday decided to go 50 basis points instead of raising 75, 100, or even acting like they were doing some sort of thing to stabilize the currency. The currency is down around 20% year to date, which is just an insane amount for a for a big major currency to fall like that. And essentially also anybody watching this from the US should be watching this and thinking, because in reality, this could very much end up in the same sort of scenarios. 20, 30 years down the line, the US could be in the exact same position where they're forced to choose between politics and saving their currency, and of course they choose politics. And I think it's absolutely disgusting what the UK government did, and I had to be really honest with you. It was hard to make that thumbnail for this video because I wanted to put so many things that I wanted to put on there. But essentially, if this is what causes all this inflation. I hope this is kind of obvious to you. It's this government deficit spending, and it's when interest rates are artificially low because people borrow, which introduces more money. It introduces more currency units, which is essentially credit. It's all debt. It's not real money like people think. And then that actually dilutes the currency. And eventually what happens is you pump up asset prices so much by reducing rates so low that people then begin to refinance their house, take money outside of their house, and then go spend it on cars, boats, ATVs, and all this kind of stuff. And then it pushes inflation through the roof. Their house becomes a funding model for a lavish lifestyle. And it's all debt. It's all not real. It's all debt. And it all ends in a poor situation, as we're seeing right now in the UK. And the irony of the whole situation is they're doing this to protect asset prices. And what they're going to do is even worse than that. They're essentially signing their death warrant, like I said, because, you know, this proves the point that we've been saying on this channel for a long, long time, is that the Bank of England, the Bank of Canada, the Federal Reserve, they do not control the interest rates in the market. And we're seeing this right now. So let's get a little bit deeper into this. So it's got London there, and it says fire sale of UK assets as market spooked by mini budget. Bond market completely spooked. So basically, it's just absolutely crazy. Now they're factoring in a 100 basis point hike for the Bank of England for the next meeting. And the reality is, if they don't do 100 basis points, it's going to go even higher. The bonds, it's just going to spiral out of control, and it could end up with Greece 2.0 is the reality. And this is why I'm worried. I'm worried for my family, you know, and I'm just seriously concerned about the UK. And not only that, I'm also looking at Canada down the road and thinking, what happens? What happens during this recession when there's a banking crisis and the government has to come in and rescue the banks? If that is happening and flying the flag in front of inflation, and all at the same time Canada is posting a negative trade surplus, then you're going to have a similar situation where the loonie just tanks and everybody just bails out of the loonie because they just think, hey, you know, they're just diluting the currency. At the end of the day, a lot of people hold currency like the pound, like the Canadian dollar, because they believe it's a stable currency and they can get some form of a yield from it. And they want to see the central banks at least acting like the Fed. I mean, whether they're acting or not acting is really neither here or there. But the fact is, the Fed said, we are focused on bringing that 2% inflation down to that 2% target. They said, we don't care about unemployment. We don't care about the housing market. We're just focused on bringing inflation down to 2%. And that's exactly what investors want to hear who are holding US dollars. Now, the reality is US dollars is the reserve currency. And that's where everyone is moving to this morning. This flight of safety is going into US dollars, as you would expect, because the thing that a lot of people don't understand is trade surpluses and how that dynamic affects your country and affects inflation. So the thing is, obviously, if you're posting a massive net negative trade balance, as in you are importing way more than you are exporting out, then that means you have to go and buy those dollars, buy those euros from the FX market to purchase those imported goods, which devalues your currency because you're putting more of your currency units on the market to be sold. Now, the pound, the UK, operates a massive trade deficit exactly like the United States does, because the pound was the reserve currency one day a long time ago. And essentially, it doesn't bode well for the pound because now they obviously import so much from Europe. Most of their stuff comes from Europe, and the pound is absolutely tanking against even the euro, because even the European Union looks like it's going to stand more of a fight against inflation than the UK, because they are just acting like completely, like just clowns, just absolutely clowns. And what this does is it's really sad, in my opinion, because it just sends the country as a whole into a depression. Everything goes down. I mean, I even put this on my Twitter the other day. They said UK housing prices are up 15% year over year. I call BS on that, because the real value when you adjust it for inflation is probably negative 15%, because their purchasing power, just if you look at the FX value decline against the US dollar, they've lost 20% purchasing power. So there is no way that inflation is running at 10%. No way on earth. So The fact that housing prices are up, no, they're not, because if you go and sell that house and then try and purchase anything with it, you're getting way less than you would have got before if you just sold it before. Now, this simple economic theory, a lot of people just have no clue. It goes straight over their head. They don't understand what it means. They see on the news media, and the UK's news media is very, very good in this way, the way they frame narratives. And the headlines today were coming out on all the papers about the tax cuts. It wasn't about how the pound was crashing. It wasn't how the bond market had just jumped 0.5% and that was going to increase interest rates. I mean, I saw one thing on Bloomberg actually, that essentially the bond jumps that have happened have essentially undone the stamp duty cuts, because stamp duty is property taxes, land transfer tax essentially in the UK. So when you buy or sell a house, you have to pay stamp duty, and they decided to cut that as well. They're trying to protect the housing market, and they just shot themselves in the head essentially, because the bond market has just undone it completely, because now rates are going to jump by more than the stamp duty is going to remove. So it was a totally pointless exercise. It was completely ridiculous, and quite frankly, this government should just step down right now. And I don't know, I mean, to be honest, it doesn't even matter even if they do, because who's going to replace them? Is it going to be a government that's going to act more responsibly? No, that's the thing, because people don't understand these basic economic principles, because the schools do not teach them, and they don't teach them for a reason. So people remain stupid and they have no idea what is really happening, and then they just send votes to their way. The problem is, this is just absolutely devastating for a country to go through this. It really, really is. But I could see this happening to Canada as well, just because the UK, it's happening in the UK, and you think, oh, well, that's over there, we're in Canada. Well, think about it. Canada, most of its trade is commodities, which is okay right now, but its biggest trading partner is the United States. So if the US goes into a recession, the demand for Canadian commodities goes down, and the US is already in a housing recession, which means less demand for wood and other commodities that come from Canada, and they import a lot from us. And then there's also oil. Oil will inevitably go down in price, and the demand for oil will go down, and then the Canada will enter a recession as well. And then what happens to their trade balance? And then what happens if there's a banking crisis? You see, you have to think about how these things could work, because essentially you're trying to safeguard yourself. And you know, it's just incredible really what's happening. It spooked all the markets. I saw large gap downs on US markets across the board. Obviously London is a massive financial hub for Europe, and it's still a huge center. The UK is still a massive economy as well. So it's very, very scary and worrying what's happening right now over there, because it could definitely happen in Canada too, especially with the ridiculous bubble that has been created by not only Liberal governments and NDP governments, joint coalitions, but you've also had the Liberal government and the Conservative government. They have all been in charge, and this bubble has been allowed to inflate, because as we see, these politicians, they don't care when it really comes down to it. And Pierre, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but the proof is in the pudding, as they say. I don't really believe anything he says. I want to see what he actually does, and we're not even going to get to that stage for many, many years. So the fact is, we're dealing with two clowns, Jagmeet and Trudeau, that are in charge right now, and I don't trust either one of them to navigate through this storm. So you've really got to have some form of insurance, whether that's US dollars, whether that's gold, silver, whatever it is. In my opinion, this is the days like these are the days why I hold gold. And even though gold is down, if you look at gold against the UK pound, it's actually not down year over year. So the thing is, the main thing to hold this year was obviously the US dollar, and I went massively into US dollars last year, and I just cannot believe it's just absolutely insane, really, what is happening over in England. I just cannot believe what is happening. in my home country. So it says right here, 100 basis point increase on the cards for the UK. A 1 point will lift interest rates to 3.25%. I think they're going to have to go higher than that. I honestly think that they're going to have to go higher than that. And I don't think they have the guts to do it. I mean, the Bank of England, they came out yesterday. They need, I mean, the reality is they should be having an emergency meeting right now and saying, hey, we need to do something. The currency is down 20%. But they just literally came out on Wednesday, I think it was, or Thursday, or it was yesterday, Thursday, I think. And they hiked 50 basis points and they said, oh yeah, we're likely already in a recession. Well, why not hike 125 basis points? The pain that England is going to suffer, England, Wales, Scotland is going to suffer because of this, is just going to be so much worse than people understand. Like, that's what people just don't get. Like, the thing is, those jesters, those people who cheer on and think that the government is going to come in and save the housing market in Canada, well, you're looking at what happens if that happens. You're looking at real home prices still going down and you just losing purchasing power on everything. So you really got to ask if that is really what you want. And even if they come in and just bail out the banks, the amount of money that will need to be created and credit that needs to be extended in order to do that, because they've allowed bubbles to get so large, will create a massive hole in the currency, if not sending it into a tailspin like the pound. Who will want to hold that currency? If the US is heading into a recession, oil prices are going down, and then on top of the fact, you've got a massive government bailout of the banking system. Like, you're kidding yourself if you think people are going to hold on to it for that reason. So, and it's not just Canada in that situation. It's Canada, Australia, New Zealand. It's the UK. It's Europe. They're all in massive trouble over this. And the funny thing is, I'm now in agreement with Brent Johnson, who does the dollar milkshake theory. And if you haven't seen that, go watch that, because this is an element of why the US dollar has been a flight to safety. And I can't thank Brent enough, because Brent and his dollar milkshake theory was the reason I went mostly into US dollars. But the thing is, you just have to understand that the US, even though its economy is going to be going into recession, even though its housing market is going to be going down, it's not going to be going down to the extent that it is going to be going down in Canada, in the UK, in Australia, in New Zealand. That is just going to be a completely different ballgame. Whilst the US might enter a severe recession, Canada is going into a depression, if not a lost decade. And the UK is already really in a depression. You know, from what I hear from people, when I was back there just in March, and all the price increases since then, it's just been insane. That essentially it is like that anyway. So, you know, this is just an absolute disaster. This is what happens when a government just essentially goes for politics and vote buying instead of doing what's right and doing what's hard. That's the thing. You're never, ever going to be a winner in this game. But you just have to acknowledge that and say, no, you know what? I'm going to do what's tough. And in the future, people will look back and they will say, yes, they did what was right at that time, even though at the time it was terrible, because it was, you know, bankrupting people, housing prices are tanking and everything like that. It's not things that people want, but these asset bubbles have to collapse. They are part of the cause of this inflation bubble. And quite frankly, just unveiling all these ridiculous tax cuts is just absolutely stupid. They're funding it by borrowing, and that is the main thing. And the bond market has absolutely showed them. I don't think on this article it has anything about the bond market, but no, it does somewhere. But anyway, I can't be bothered. But just look at the UK gilts, which are the UK bond yields. They've jumped 0.5%. 0.5% move. Some of them are up 12 to 15%. That's just an insane move. And if they go up any more, they'll end up like Greece. They won't be able to afford to pay back that debt. and it will enter a spiral then, because if the Bank of England then comes in and goes, okay, we'll buy your debt, well, guess what, it's game over then. Kiss goodbye to the currency and say hello Venezuela. So anyway guys, thank you for watching. Not a very positive one this morning, or optimistic one, because I really, quite frankly, I'm worried about this, and I hope you can see that on the look on my face and the fact that I've come here 7:50 in the morning to deliver this as soon as possible, because I think a lot of people are going to be scratching their head wondering what the hell is going on in the UK, and it could very much be happening soon in Australia, New Zealand, and other places like Canada. So, you know, don't count your chickens. This is really, really bad, and we'll continue to see how this unfolds over the next couple of days here and what comes out of it. Maybe they do have an emergency meeting, who knows. But anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, take care of yourselves guys, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.